One day, there was a most beautiful tree. Her branches were strong and lovely, her foliage was full, her trunk was strong, and her bark was golden. A young man happened upon her one day. He climbed her branches, he swung from her and danced around her trunk. The tree felt loved and appreciated. He told her, "I love you," so she loved this young man right back. After a while, he would sometimes become angry at the tree. He would break off her branches, strip off her leaves, and carve her bark with a knife. This pained the beautiful tree deeply. She tried and tried to not do anything to make him angry, but she couldn't figure out how to avoid it. It seemed like it didn't matter what she did, he would get mad at her. Then he would be loving again, so she would think everything was okay. But it kept happening over and over. She desperately wanted to please him and to keep his love. Then he started to bring other young men around to see her. He would sometimes brag about her to them. Other times he let them cut her branches, strip off her leaves, or carve in her bark with a knife. She started to feel scared and confused. She couldn't leave. She loved him deeply. She felt like she needed him, but it hurt and made her feel empty inside when she was cut like that. One day the young man brought one of his friends with him to visit the beautiful tree. She had some scars in her bark and some of her limbs were broken, but she was still beautiful even though she didn't always feel that way. The young man encouraged his friend to cut her bark, to swing from her branches, to strip off her leaves. He nudged him, saying, "Go ahead, she likes it." He grinned and cut off her branches and carved in her bark. They laughed and laughed. She overheard them saying that she deserved it, that she wanted it, and that she was stupid. Their words and laughter cut her on the inside, causing her roots to start to rot. She cried and cried once they left. One day after that, the young man returned alone and showered her with affection and planted some flowers by her trunk. He told her, "I love you," and she thought that now everything was all right again. One day, some strangers wandered by and noticed the beautiful tree. They came close and marveled at the carvings in her bark, wondering who would do such a thing. They saw her broken branches and missing leaves. "How weird," they said, and then wandered away. One day, those same strangers wandered by again when the young man and his friends were cutting her branches. They watched from afar for a few minutes, then continued on, thinking it was best if they minded their own business. The beautiful tree was hoping they would save her from the pain, but they didn't seem to care enough about her. She wondered if maybe the young men were right, that she did deserve this. Maybe this was all she was good for after all. One day a police officer came by and saw the beautiful tree. He examined the cuts in her bark, the broken limbs and the torn off leaves. He even noticed the half-dead flowers by her trunk. He'd seen this type of thing before and knew that some young men had been enjoying this tree. He shook his head in disgust and put up a fence around the tree. At first, the beautiful tree thought he was doing this to protect her, to keep her safe, to stop the pain. But then he put up a sign that read, "Keep out, dangerous tree." Now no one could get to her, but she wasn't safe or protected. She hoped her young man would come by and save her. One day he did come by and he tore down the fence, but left the sign up because he thought that was funny. He promised the beautiful tree that it would be different from now on because he loved her so much. But it wasn't. He kept bringing his friends around and telling them to destroy her branches and bark. She became more and more scarred. One day the young man came by and he was extra angry at her. He cut her as deep as his knife would go. He sawed off her biggest branches and left her with no leaves. She didn't know what she had done to make him so mad. Lately she had hardly done anything at all, so how could she have done something to make him this angry at her? She often spent all night trying to figure this out. One day a group of strangers happened by and noticed her. They saw her scars, her cut-off branches, and her torn-off leaves. They knew right away what had happened to her, and they came up to her and wrapped their arms around her trunk. They explained to her how the young man didn't know how to love her the way she deserved, and they promised to protect her. They set up a tent nearby, and someone stayed with her all day and all night for weeks and weeks. They watered her, gave her roots nourishment, and only ever removed dead leaves. When the young man came back to see her, they shooed him away. After a while, he quit coming back. One day, the beautiful tree noticed that she felt different. She felt strong again. Her roots had gotten deeper. Her trunk had gotten stronger. Her limbs were fuller than ever before. At each place her branches had been cut off, they grew offshoots, so she had even more branches. Her leaves were luscious again, thicker where they had been stripped off before. The scars on her bark had new bark, and this new bark somehow was more golden than any bark she'd ever seen. She realized she felt beautiful again and excited about being a tree again. She knew now that she deserved to be treated with kindness and respect and gentleness. She was experiencing real love.